This conference will now be recorded.
So we're going to continue on from the NTL session earlier and now to session 2. I'm going to invite Ben Williams, Keith Curris, and Dr. Rafael Ramos up here. And we're going to kind of see from the third-party providers side as opposed to the industry partners. Also, I'm going to hand it over to Ben, who says he doesn't need a microphone, but he can use it to point at people.
Yeah, I don't know. Does anybody need me to use a mic? I'm generally loud enough. No? Mike? Mike? Okay. Okay, Ben Williams, Global Medicine Director at Fugro. About 18 months ago, I moved from the Americas regional role to a global role focused on strategy and largely PowerPoints. And I handed over my regional responsibility to Paolo and the team here in Houston who supports the region. So I will run through a Fugro-centric.
It's just a live stream, Ben. Shall we move?
Okay.
Yeah. Next one. Yeah.
Yeah. So Fugro's scope observations, 20 years of oceanauts. I laugh a bit about the NTL in general because it's sort of intrinsically linked to my career. I think it's why Jan offered me a job 21 years ago, was the NTL was coming out and they needed more people who could go on boats. So this is how we got here. Excellent. Yeah, covering what Fugro does in the mid-ocean space. Really 4 categories: surveys, moorings, the acquisition component that people tie our service provision to more often than not. But we do carry on through the operational and design criteria phases, not so much for the large majors like Shell and Chevron and BP that we heard from earlier, but we do continue that same level of service that they provide internally to their organizations for the smaller outfits, thinking the ATPs, the Marubeni's, the Conocos, that don't necessarily have in-house oceanographic expertise now. Operational mid-ocean forecasting, this is both weather forecasting in the marine environment as well as ocean forecasting, and of course the mid-ocean modeling and hindcasts that go into supporting both the forecast component and the criteria components. So instrumentation we're providing into GCOOS. We have the sort of almost a network of buoys now. We started with the Petrobras PAI mooring 2008 when they brought the first FPSO into the Gulf of Mexico. It was Gulf of Mexico at that time. They had a challenge of how they would suspend a 38 kilohertz and meet the NTL requirements of a spread moored FPSO with multiple risers and acoustic reflections, and decided to go for an independent buoy system. It was a bit of a challenge with Petrobras being quite a closed client in the mentality of data sharing. They do a bit more in Brazil, but weren't so used to the sort of NTL approach. But we were able to work with their oceanographic experts in-house in Brazil and here in the Americas, and actually get them to allow us to use the NDVC buoy XML data format to share all of the parameters, meteorological, wave, and currents, which was one of the first times. So 42360, I think, is the NDVC ID that everybody's referred to it as an NDVC buoy for years, but it's actually been the Fugro system that now operates for Murphy and has a continuous time series at that location from 2008. Shell Stones, which we heard about earlier from Sergio, is the second example of where we advanced that same concept, supporting yet another FPSO. And those have then scaled to BP's Thunder Horse and Atlantis platforms. The rig ADCP systems that contribute in the traditional NTL market have scaled between 1 and maximum time 18 systems in the Gulf of Mexico I could find that we had deployed. That ebbs and flows really based on market and oil price more than more than environmental or oceanographic need. Instrumentation is traditionally 38s. We've moved over to pinnacles now as the 38ths of age are aging out. Current profile, NTL compliance, GPS position attached to the data feeds. Next slide. Yeah, so really, how do we use the data? And it's really about this building confidence through validation. So as we heard from others being a bit more critical of modelers, we can only be critical of modelers if we actually have data sources to validate those models and that model performance. Whether that's wave data from our buoy systems or from the existing NDBC stations around the Gulf, or current profiles. How do we validate those from wave models? How do we validate the current and circulation models for the loop current? And then how do we validate the hindcast models to build things like current profile criteria and the confidence in those data sets, where we can avoid making additional site-specific measurements when we actually have sufficient data to do that validation. And similar to Sergio and Mike, providing that sort of guidance to their internal stakeholders during construction and operation, having this sort of spatial understanding, we can provide advice to the other smaller outfits that don't actually have the oceanographic consultancy in-house. And data sharing, it's the partnership approach and how it multiplies value. So whether we're a GCOOS consumer, taking the historical data sets, embedding them into our daily workflows, looking at model validation, hindcast development, and that real-time operational forecasting, having that open access allows us to work for our clients without having to go and ask for data permission in various places. Fuga as a data contributor, I've already commented on how we're doing. This is a core service for our operations and core source of revenue, providing these instrumentation, providing good quality measurements. And then the open data multiplier effect is bringing all of this together with better observations, validated models, confident engineering criteria, made for safer operations for everybody in the Gulf, so we don't have moratoriums and shutdowns as we've seen in the past. And where Rafael and Keith and I have competed for the last 20 years, when we actually go to win the work, it changes the dynamic. So we know that we're actually now contributing good data, and Rafael can have a sense of confidence if he's looking at a Fugo data set, the same as I would have a sense of confidence. So it does change the dynamic from the RPS data, of course. Sorry, Keith. And it does sort of level up, right? Rising tide lifting all ships is the approach we get from this. That's it. And with that, I'll pass over to Keith.
Thank you, sir. Okay, well, thank you. And thank you to Texas A&M for hosting. I am not an Aggie, but I will brag a little bit. My oldest daughter just graduated in December, so she's the first Aggie. So since they're hosting here, and dig out a shirt. One down, one to go.
Is that going to whoop or a howdy?
Well, you start with a howdy. Okay, next slide.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, one more, please.
Oh, okay.
So, just a little bit of an overarching view of the company. I'm Keith Curris. I manage the Mid-Ocean Division for Tetra Tech now. There's enough old timers, or I could say old farts, that we originally were Evans Hamilton, formed in 1971. We were acquired by RPS in 2011. And so we went from we're still the same group, Mid-Ocean Group, but we went from a 35 employee company to a 5,000 employee company. They have a lot of different business units within RPS. So we started with the Ocean Science Group and then built the natural energy, and Ocean Science does mostly modeling. So it was a good fit for what we do. And then in 2023, we were bought by Tetra Tech, so we went from a 5,000 employee company to about 25,000. We've bounced around a couple different business units that we're now sitting in a Houston group. But we're still the same group from from the Hamilton days. And if you want to go to the next slide. So what do we do? Apologies if it sounds familiar from the last 3 speakers. We do more than what's on the slide, but kind of focused on what we do in the Gulf. I just call it the Gulf, that way it's easier. Obviously, one of our big, I kind of call it the meat and potatoes of the group, is we service the NTL by measuring ocean currents. So we supply that both to the assets as well as the MODUs, and that's through real time and the deployment systems. Some of the funner parts we do is the integrated ocean measurement systems. And these are mainly for like the new builds that come in, new assets that come into the Gulf of Mexico.
That's okay.
America.
Oh, sorry.
Back ones. And this is where we're supplying, they can call them marine instrumentation systems, environmental facilities, monitoring systems, but they're basically taking a lot of net ocean sensors, integrating it into one package through a server, and then serving that to the marine advisory system on the rig. We've done a number of those for the new builds in the Gulf, as well as been updating a number of older systems to new servers. And then one of our specialties is deep sea or deep water ocean moorings. When I first started, 200 meters, 500 meters was deep back in the latex program. Now we're in 4,000 meters, not in the Gulf per se, but these are full ocean water depth moorings. We do a lot of this type of work. Usually it's in advance of the PSOs or other rigs coming into to the area. They're usually year-long studies with multiple different types of sensors. And then the last one I've got listed here is renewables. We do a lot of LiDAR wind measurements and support of pipeline operations as well. If you go to the next slide. So this is a little bit confusing. It's a little hard to see maybe, but this is a great representation of one of our mismatched systems that should give you the idea of the flavor of the instruments that are on some of these assets. You know, they go from single anemometers to complex AWOS systems, which are the automated weather observation systems. These are the same systems that are at all your airports. They have salometers, multiple anemometers, humidity, barometric pressure, visibility. We also do some LiDAR measurements. So the great diversity in what asset has on each of the platforms. And then there's other stuff that like air gap sensors, wave radar, all the way down to the subsea where we have horizontal and vertical APs. And those are the only data sets we are currently sending to GCOOS. So that currents and probably temperature. And then why is this data important? You've heard this a lot already. It's for the engineering and design criteria for the stakeholders to, and also supply the big safety component for supporting real-time observations, as well as asset life extension, forecasting, modeling, and supporting web portals for decision. With that, next.
Okay, so I'm Rafael Ramos with Whistle Group, CLS, for all of you who are familiar with that company. We were purchased 5 years ago by a French conglomerate, so we're part of that family now. Everything that we do is basically what they do. We just do it a little bit better.
Now here we go.
No. We compete with each other, but we have a lot of respect professionally. I mean, if somewhere in the world, because this is what we operate, right, as a need for commercial oceanography. If you are in anybody's, in this panel, you're in good hands, and that's the reality. We collaborate a lot recently. We share data with GCOOS, UGOS, and we also, we're part of the same niche oceanographic people, right? So we know each other. Sometimes we switch companies, right? Anyway, going back to the presentation, this is something that you're familiar with. So can you go to the next one? Again, this is something that they already went through. Measurements, basically. The only new thing to add here is we also use a lot of satellite imagery, specifically to estimate where our best estimate of what this line means, which is a 1.5 knot isotac. That's crucial for industry because that is what gives them the limit of operational conditions, right? So they need to know where this line is with respect to the facilities at any given point to do planning and move operations away. We also do, and I don't know, Kid, did you do these, the vessel-mounted ADCPs? We have donated over 1,600 transects to UGOS and GCOOS. That means vessels going back and forth through the big currents, like it's shown here. We recently have an unmanned vehicle that was operating successfully. You guys have also, something in the works for that they have done also trials before. So everything that I'm saying here, they can do, basically. Next one. This is how the Gulf looks like. This is the 1.5 knot, and the reason that I bring it up is because we also deploy drifters, and those curvy lines there are drifters, and all these straight arrows that you see there are data points that are coming from the NTL dataset. And those are crucial because at any given point, you do have the drifters, but you also have the arrows to point you, and as somebody was mentioning before, you have a lot of out layers that you can clean up with this data. Can you go to the next one? This is just to show what we can do with the data that is real time. You can the operators can look at the currents and see, what's the level, what depths, right? What's to be affected, and can you go to the next one? Yeah, and this is a clear example of what NTL data does for us, right? We don't have a drifter in this region, but we do have a measurement from one of the rigs, so we can actually estimate where this black contour goes to, right? Then Mike and Sergio, we give this to them, and then they get to plan what to do to stop operations, to move rigs, or anything that follows. And Ben alluded to this. Ultimately, what we want is to have the data to validate models, right? This is not a pretty picture, especially if you are a modeler. This is where the 1.5 knot isotac should be, and this is what the model says it looks like. So there's a lot of work to do. Michael Feldman is going to talk to you about a lot of work that is going on this afternoon on UGOS, and we are also working on that along those lines. And data sharing, well, we've said it all, right? It's crucial for us to keep sharing data, not only for the operators, but also for the community at large. And again, as I was saying earlier, if you can use this data, please, by all means, right? I know it's a little bit deeper to some of you, but it gives a picture of the entire Gulf. And there's a lot of data there. So with that, I think that's my last one. Yeah. And open to questions.
Perfect. I just want to say thank you guys. So when I proposed this NTL industry update session, it was twofold. The NTL data is a huge chunk of data that we house here on campus for GCOOS that's managed by Feldman over here in this corner. So it's important to show that we have this massive data set. It's several terabytes worth of data at this point, and we have terabytes of data that go back and forth every day. And we know that it's being used, but we don't know by who. So this is where the question comes back, like, who are your stakeholders? How do you get them engaged? And we know that these three are using the data because we can see it, right? We see this massive flux every day at certain routines when their scripts run to pull the NTL data from the day before or 6 hours or 12 hours before. So how do we go and how do you guys propose that we track down other people? It's like we know that the smaller companies aren't doing that, but you guys are. So is it worth going and reaching out to them to try to get their support and show that, yes, we care about this data? Because if we didn't have this data, one, it would be almost impossible for you to do this because you're just using models. But do you suggest, as you alluded earlier, that we reach out to these people to try to get support that shows their data and how it's helpful for these smaller companies that wouldn't be able to do this otherwise?
Yeah, for me, it's sort of the crux of the question I asked Mike and Sergio, right, is how much do we want additional to be mandated so that, you know, it feels like a tax, and how do they see the benefit that they get back from it, right? I think for the smaller operators, they just see it as the requirement, right? But it's not over the top, but it's always been there. When they actually get to a point of having to move from exploratory drilling to design and operations, they want to know why they're missing the playoffs. Why didn't we measure at the surface? Well, you didn't have to. So, you know, we end up in this rub, but then that's some of the coaching that we have to do. You know, I don't know from you guys, what's the appetite, right? Seabed measurements would be the first. I don't think we even enforce the requirement because after 2 years you can get a waiver for seabed measurements, even at the escarpment area. I think that's probably a more valuable data set in the long run, as we heard about pipelines and pipeline risk. But where do we go for that stakeholder engagement? Does it need to be stick or can it be carrot? If so, is the only stick the government and Boehm, Bessie updating? And what is that carrot? I think is really the crux of the question.
Yeah. The original intent of the mandate was to measure full column measurements, whatever that meant. Then 38s were used to measure, which that would give you roughly the 1,000 meters. But then, you know, easier, less sophisticated systems were available, and then we were starting using 75 kilohertz equipment that reaches all the 750 meters. So some operators were actually measuring at the bottom at the same time, but as Sergio mentioned, well, you cannot do that really in real time, right? So you deploy a system there, then you harvest the data when you go and maintain the buoy, whatever you have there. But interestingly enough, all the data that was collected or is being collected at the bottom is sent to GCOOS, but nobody is processing that. So the raw data files are there, but there's no process for that, right? So there's a gap that needs to be closed. On the data, people knowing where the data is, I think that's a problem, and it's not necessarily GCOOS, but it's just, I think, the community itself, right? And this is my personal opinion. Scientists want to do all by themselves, and sometimes they don't really look for everything that is out there that can benefit what they're doing, right? We recently, well, a couple of years ago, we were approached by a company, an operator, a smaller operator, that told us that they had paid a third-party company to do quality control of their data in their platform. And, we're being paid by UGOS to do the entire set every year. So there's a complete disconnect there at all levels, right? How to solve it, I don't know. I'm just pointing out, what the problems that I'm seeing. But maybe GCOOS is the way to start putting the word out.
All right, and I want to you had mentioned that you're sending data, but it's not being presented essentially.
Yeah.
Like we heard from Sergio and Mike that they're collecting tons of metocean data, LiDAR data, wave data, all this stuff that most of that, except for the ADSB data, is not being sent to GCOOS. Would that data be critical and useful to you so you're not relying on models for data? You have these real measurements that you don't have to go hunt down or find, they're just there. So is there data that you think that GCOOS, that metocean providers are collecting that you think GCOOS should be housing and QCing that would make more beneficial to you, or do you see that as not a real challenge?
Well, me as a service provider, let's say a criteria study that we do. If you have all the entire water column, of course you would prefer that and not having partial coverage, right? It was mentioned, topographic Rossby waves and things like that. We don't have enough information to characterize that, right? So is it important? Of course it is, right? That data is already being shared, and there's no mechanism to quality control it, right? That is on the side of the data that could be potentially shared in addition to what is already there, right? So I think the GCOOS is the right entity to do it. It's just that you would need to work with the operators and see what can be shared, what cannot be, and then just process it. That's my take.
There's so little known about the topographic Rossby waves, we're still referring to them as bottom intensified currents as not TRWs, so we don't start that debate.
But one thing I want to add though too is the stakeholders are always going to want more data, but it's not a simple linear increase in cost once you go deeper. They go up exponentially. You can collect any data you want, but are you willing to pay for it?
Yeah.
And the stakeholders only have a limited budget, so where's the money going to come from? And the minor operators, they're only going to do what they're required to do. There's only a few of the bigger companies that have the mid-ocean team that are doing the asset lab extensions and stuff like that, using the data.
Yeah, but I think some of it as well is the value description, right? So when we started working in the Mid-Atlantic for the offshore wind operators, we were getting closer from the track record they had in Europe to sort of answering some of these questions. If we measured currents all the way through the water column, and we had a 2-year study that could be validated with a 40-year hindcast, we could save 3 millimeters of steel, which is worth $12 million at my wind farm. We really struggle in the Gulf to get to that because how many hurricanes? How much loop current activity? What seasonal variability? What is that criteria building up to? And then how do we tie that to the savings that actually justifies? Because then that exponential growth of expense of measurement. But if you could get 10 years design life extension out of your mooring or your subsea infrastructure, it's an easy sell for the likes of Sergio and Mike inside their organizations. But it's hard to pin down that number. And it's not an oceanographic question. It's an oceanography to engineering bridge that needs to be built, where you really understand not the first level of stakeholder, but the second and third, right?
Question, Sergio?
I just want to add something to what Danny's saying there. I think it's very important in second and third tiers to quantify the impact of what we do. And as an oceanographer, I have limited answers to that. But I'll give you an example of that. So when we're doing riser design, I work with riser engineers. They, at least some of them in my company, have a rule of thumb that if you don't have any measurements, you only have like a model data for their design criteria of a riser, they use a safety factor of 10. If they have measurements, they lower that safety factor to 3. In my mind, that's an economic benefit that I don't know how to quantify. They probably know how to quantify. So the second, third, and the third tier are going to be important to that discussion. So we stop here with the first tier. So how do we reach out to these other people? We try to do it internally in our company. All of us try to, but it has to be beyond the companies. And as they are mentioning already, the operators that have in-house methodian teams are very limited. I would say the majority of the ones in the Gulf do not have. And when they go to the contractors, their job stops when they send the criteria study or the operational study that they are doing. So I think the bigger impact would be to reach out to those independent or smaller companies that operate in the Gulf. So that's one.
Good point. Dr. Beckham?
I've got a nuts and bolts question for you. We manufacture a specialty anti-fouling for sensors and antenna and so forth. Is there a need for that in the equipment you do?
Subsea, yes. You've got competition though.
Can yours be, ours is the only one that can be applied underwater.
Well, then they've got enough.
We can't put anybody in the water.
Can you put a
Really?
brush on an RC? No, it's health and safety.
How do you maintain your buoys?
You recover them to the vessel.
Okay,
Health and safety working for these guys won't allow us into the water. Yeah.
I got you.
Can I ask a different question?
Steve's over there.
My different question, can I change the topic?
Go for it.
Yeah, so with regard to modeling, I've heard a lot about the modeling, and as a reformed modeler, I've heard a lot about the models are wrong, or the models are doing well, and for the most part, that's probably right. But have you asked why? And why aren't the models or the forecast systems, not the model per se, but the forecast system, why isn't it doing well? And I'm going to submit to you that perhaps you're asking the systems that, as you have them designed, to do things that they're not designed to do. Or you have a 3-kilometer grid on your ocean model, but if you want more than 3-kilometer resolution to resolve your features, you're not going to get that.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so, okay, what's the answer? Well, maybe I should set up a 1-kilometer or a sub-kilometer grid model. Okay, well, it's very expensive, for one thing. And the other thing is you don't have the observations to constrain a 1-kilometer model. So it is kind of a catch-22, but I just point that out because not you personally, but the consensus is that the models aren't doing well. And I'm suggesting that they're not designed to do what you're asking them to do.
Correct.
So I just wanted to kind of, put that out there.
I agree completely.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Pat. See, when I consider myself an observationist, such a word exists, we would like to deploy an ADCP or, the weather station and have the model telling us, mimicking what we're measuring, right? To the low turbulence, scale. That is not possible. We say that the models don't work because they don't represent the phenomena that we want them to work, right? But that doesn't mean that the models are wrong, right? And we have to adapt. We need to do, stochastic processing and things like that, right? We just heard, we need an estimate of what the loop current is doing in 3 months. Wow, that's a tall order, right? So what we need to do as a community is just deal with the models the way they are, and just deal with it until we find something better. Right? Okay.
Andrew,
That's my
you want to jump in? Andrew is a colleague of mine.
Yeah, so I'm at Tetra Tech, well, RPS, I'm with the Oceanside modeling team, so a lot of this stuff we deal with all the time. I would mirror what you just said, is that we gotta work with what we got, right? I think the reality is, one space that we're researching quite heavily is looking at some of what is being done in the space of AI modeling, which is not surprising, right? Copernicus is doing a fantastic job with their new ocean current model that's, for all intents and purposes, using no computation, right? It's all predicted using AI. So I think the reality is lower cost instrumentation, HF radar, there's a satellite now in the world that has HF radar on it, right? It's still in test phase, but there's a HF radar in the world that is in the sky, right? That makes much better representation of sea surface currents. But it's just going to continue to evolve, right? The models are going to continue to evolve. We're going to have lower cost instrumentation, hopefully. But the reality is, dealing with the ocean currents is the most complex measurement process on the planet, right? That is reality. Quantifying the ocean is impossible. We will never be able to do it fully, but I think coming from Ireland, I live in the States, but I travel all over the world dealing with industry, like I deal with industry in North America, but North America is the most observed place on the planet, right? So kudos to everybody involved for doing such a fantastic job of observing. But the reality is that we just need to observe more, we need to continue to do it. You talked about a $1 billion program to collect data. The reality is that is it. It's very costly, right? Our models can only be as good as the observed data that we have to drive them, so.
Yeah,
There
no,
are a few other components to that. There's the data assimilation component. Okay, so you can do better you can do a better job of inserting the observations that you have into your system, and whether it's a more sophisticated covariance or whatever it might be. Okay, but I think there's a lot of improvements that can be had there. And the other thing I would think about is adaptive sampling, and really targeting the observations to where they need to be. You already do that to some extent. I mean, you drop drifters in the loop current, right? You fly ROCUS where you're having an operation. But I mean, you can really swarm things to minimize forecast error to a particular area. And there are observations are key, as he said, but there's a few more things that that can be addressed.
You are correct in that the models are being stretched, right, to their capabilities. The future of modeling is what you're talking about, right? It's remote sensing, swarm data collection to do downscale versions of the model at a very centralized location. That gives us a short-term forecast for 6 to 12 hours based on those real-time, right? That is the reality of where modeling will go in the future. It will be a mesh of lots of small-scale models that will then pull together. Exactly.
yeah, but I mean, it's also an easy dialogue to have, right? I mean, Sunday afternoon, I think it was the front came through Houston. We'd been watching the front all the way through. I was really annoyed. It was like an hour and a half early because I was in the swimming pool. Right? It's easy to complain about the model being wrong, and that's what the amount of observations and weather bug covering the whole U.S. and the front started in Sierra Nevadas and came all the way to Houston, right? It should have been better. That could have been like a day of downtime for an asset in the Gulf if it was off wet. But it's an easy one to complain about.
We have about 5 minutes. I know Steve had a question. You good? All right, Sergio.
So I just want to say a few things here related to that, and maybe it's a question to you as well as to Pat and the other modeling community. So I grant that it's really cheap to target the models, right? And they are not designed to do what we want them to do. But I used to do modeling, so I was always frustrated with a few of the things that I was doing. And I moved to be an observationalist from that. But to me, one of the most frustrating things is models are amazing, useful tools, and we need them and we use them. Flawed as they may be, they provide a better understanding of what's going to happen in the future and what's happening in the past, because our observation we're looking to a peephole to what's going on in a very big system, right? What I like, and I think it's a challenge and it's a question, is we are gathering all these observations. I think I remember when I just joined the oil and gas industry, I think I asked Pat at the moment, it's like, why are we assimilating into any model all these current observations? That was maybe 12, 13 years ago. There were problems then. The problems seem to still be happening now. We are very good at assimilating satellite products, drifters, gliders, you still haven't been able to simulate real-time current measurements. So it's an aspiration that I hope I can pass to the modeling community. But the modeling is an integral component of all these things, because we are looking at what's happening at the moment in a tiny place, and we need to make sense of it in both time and space. And there's only modes for us to do that. It's the only solution.
Well, again, thank you three, and Sergio and Mike, for this whole session. We'll wrap this one up. So give them a round of applause. Thank you. And I'm going to pass this along to our next session.
I'm just gonna say there's just a live stream of what's on the computer. How's it? So you can see what it is.
Okay.
It helps you how to turn around.
All right. Yeah, right. So hi everybody, I'm Soraya Dananias. James, thank you for being here, hanging in there. I hope you enjoyed lunch. Again, I am the CEO and founder for the Gulf Ridge Institute, and I also have a science background, mostly marine ecology and fisheries ecology. That's what I did. Those were all my degrees. I also taught and have been teaching for science communication, K-12, and all the things, education and engagement, including community engagement, for more years. There's a lot of young people here, so probably before you were born, a couple of decades of that. So I proposed this particular session because I wanted to showcase just exactly what this is: ecosystem balance, ecosystem and environmental balance, right? When we look at an ecosystem, we often forget that we are part of that system. We're not just connected to nature, we are actually part of nature. And within that, because of who we are as a human species, we have not only the responsibility, but also the responsibility to respect the resources, which I don't like to use the word resources. We often, in my community, refer those to as our non-living relatives, non-human relatives, right? We have our water, which we consider a living entity, as well as everything that is living, from the microbacteria. So is there any microbiologists in here? No. I'm in a data place right now, so it's a very different space for me. But you have, from that microbe, right, to the things that we're going to talk about within our panel that I'm going to introduce in just a second. Those are the things that we need to also consider when we're collecting data, and to realize that every single data point represents some kind of life, whether it's the water that we're measuring, the currents, that energy that it's providing for us, all the way to the turtles and the amazing whales that these individuals are going to be talking about right now. And then how do we actually have balance in that? I was happy to hear Marcus and I, he did his session, and I was happy to hear that, because with GCOOS data, I would hope that a lot of our industry partners consider some of the data that these individuals are going to talk about, because it talks about the life that we have within the Gulf of Mexico, right? What people recognize in our communities. Just a quick question: can anybody here name the 5 sea turtles in the Gulf? Can anybody name 4? Okay. So if that was a difficult task, right? Then we also need to educate ourselves and have balance with when we're collecting that, to understand what we are collecting and why we are collecting it as well, right? If we can't name 5 or 4 or 3, or most people can name 1, but 5 of our turtles within that. I'm also just learning about the rice well, which Megan's going to talk about in a second. How many of you have heard about the rice well? Okay, so more than the 5 turtles, that's good. But you know that turtles exist within that, that's a good thing. Again, just want you to kind of open your mind a little bit onto what we can do together, right? Because within that balance in that ecosystem, we also have to be willing to work together and integrate these things that we are doing. As scientists, we have a responsibility to not only what we are doing within our own groups, but to the communities that it is affecting. If you look at here, I took these directly from our GCOOS site. We have healthy ecosystems and living resources. We have human health and safety, coastal hazards, marine operations, and long-term environmental variability. So all of these things, for those of you who did not know, when I came in a few years ago, I've been working in the Gulf. This is my home. I've lived here forever. Went to school here, went to Louisiana, all the places. But I had not heard much about what GCOOS did, even though I knew Chris forever. We've known Chris and I have known each other for a long time. I didn't really know what GCOOS did. And when I started kind of going into that system, I started realizing, I'm like, this is some really, not just cool data that you guys are collecting, but data is power. But unless we know how to use that, how to interpret it, or we help others interpret it, it really can't be used other than probably by the people in this room. And that's another thing you need to look at, is you just take 5 seconds and look around. We've talked about this before. Who is missing in this space when we're talking about data collection? You don't have to say it out loud. I'm not going to ask you to name 5 turtles again, or people who are missing in this room. So, communities, right? The communities that rely on this data, not just from the perspective of the scientists, but who are asking. So I work a lot with local organizations, grassroots organizations, communities that are frontline communities. If you do not know, the Gulf is our frontline communities. We are like literally at the edge of everything. And we take the brunt of everything. Hurricanes, the development that comes with that, sea level rise, everything. That's why the Gulf is so important, because we bear the burden of that. But we have GCOOS collecting amazing data, not just for the people in this room, but something that could actually be used to do all of these things right here on a more local level and also regional level. I am really glad to see young people here. I say young because I feel, in my mind I'm still like 20, but I know that I'm not. Wells feels like 20. My body says differently. But to also understand that this generation is the next generation that's coming up. So I'm glad they're in this space, but to be more inclusive, maybe I should have invited you to some of these panels so you can talk about your research. But I just want to close before I introduce Ryan and Megan. Just to think about that, right? This is all of our survival in the Gulf, right? This is everybody's, not just one certain industry or a certain sector. And if there's ways, we can loop back, if there's ways to involve communities with what we're doing, and empower those communities to use the data to make decisions, not just for themselves, but at the local, regional level, national level. That is probably an invaluable service that we can provide. So I just, again, want you to think about that just for a little bit, and just think about what balance means. Because I think we can all agree there's a little bit of imbalance right now. And I'll just leave it there. We have 2 presenters today who, thankfully, took my invitation to come on this panel. And then we have 2 videos from 2 people who could not be with here today, Marcus and Philippe Tissot, who provided a video for us to share some of their work, as well as share some of the things that, how are they using GCOOS data in their everyday work. So for you guys, just present yourself, who you are, And then we'll start with Megan, and flips over.
Hi, I'm Megan Housen. I'm with GCOOS as their marine biologist working on the cetacean and sea turtle atlas project. I'm gonna switch.
Yeah.
Okay, so cetacean is multiple species of cetaceans. We kind of grouped them, but one of the biggest ones we have conversations right now around is Rice's whale, and then sea turtle atlas covers all the sea turtles within the Gulf. That's a little bit of a newer project, so we're not quite as far along with cetacean, but we're trying to pull together a bunch of different data sets, both for population, anthropogenic, and environmental data. So Soraya mentioned earlier, how do we kind of increase data access and help people interpret this data? Some of the data sets can be found in multiple different places. It's not just GCOOS data, but it's very time consuming both for the researchers to try to go through and access 15 different portals or contact individual researchers who are more than happy to share their data, but you have to wait for them to answer their email and then pull it in and put it in the format that you need. So that's just a time barrier. Or for some of the members of our communities, some of our restoration managers, they might not have the background to say, for this particular population, here are the anthropogenic factors that impact them, or here are the environmental factors that impact them, and also which data set to use. Some of our panelists earlier mentioned how it's very different when you're talking about what's going on in the surface of the water column versus going down several hundred, if not 1,000 meters deep. Those are two different data sets that you're going to be looking at. So we're able to kind of pull those in and direct our users to, for this species, you want to look at this data set. And here it is, all in one place and formatted, ready for you to use, all within the same portal. We kind of saw with cetacean how useful it is, even for us. A couple months ago, we were asked to pull together a bunch of different data sets for Rice's whale, and what that would have been a several-day project to, even though we knew exactly where the data was, to actually pull it all into one place, turned into about an hour or so, because all the data was right there and it was clicking a few buttons, and now it was in one nice figure ready to use. We also have a couple different models and dashboards. So the model shown at the bottom is vessel strike lethality. I want to make it very clear, this is not the odds that a strike occurs, but if a strike were to occur, what's the damage that it would do to that species? And then we have some dashboards. So this is just trying to take some very dense data that might not be very user-friendly to look at and put it into something that's a little bit easier for them to use and have a lot of different background information so they don't need that subject matter expertise. We do also have some education and curriculum materials in there. In a past life, I was a middle school and high school teacher, so it was nice to kind of go back to that and try to reach the communities. The students really have a knack for picking up how to use the data and how to use the data portal, but trying to provide that scaffolding for them to how to approach the problem and what are some of the questions they could be asking. And lastly, I also want to touch upon, we're trying to increase some of the data that we're generating. So I've been working with Bob to build an acoustic classifier with Guardians. So these are for some of our partners who might be collecting the acoustic data, but they don't have either the species expertise. If you are a fish person, looking at cetacean acoustics is two completely different things. Or for me, the opposite. We have a lot of people who are interested in some of the fish data, and they can show me the calls all day long, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm looking at. I'm improving on that, but to have a classifier that is able to go through and process that for them, and also much more quickly. So this Guardian processes in a couple minutes what would take me several months to go through and do manually. So we're taking data that's coming from a variety of different sources, primarily through all the different glider pilot partners that we have who are collecting this data, but it's not their background. And this is showing the model and also what the model is looking at. So these are all Rice's whale calls, and the green box is highlighting what the model found interesting about that call when it identified it. So we started with Rice's whale. We're at about 98% accuracy with that, but we also have classifiers started for sperm whales and black grouper. And the ultimate goal would be any interest in cetaceans, any interest in fish, eventually maybe even sea turtles, so that's a much newer field. Somebody could send in the acoustic files and we could send them back. Here's what species you detected. Now they can actually use that data to make the scientific decisions rather than spending months to years just processing and figuring out what they had. And with that, I will pass it over.
Go ahead, Matt.
Thank you. Afternoon, I hope everyone's still awake. So, all right. I'm about 50-50. I might need some coffee after this. But my name is Ryan Hannum. I'm one of the research technicians for the Flower Garden Bank's National Marine Sanctuary, specifically looking at the water quality parameters. But we are a very close-knit, connected team where everyone's kind of working on the same projects as a crew. And I don't know if did anybody follow the Artemis mission? Everyone should have, honestly. But during the post-trip press conference, astronaut Christina Cook had a beautiful description of what a crew was, and it's a collective of people with not only the same goals, but the same kind of inner passions and really the drive and that interconnectedness, which Sarita, you touched on really great. I apologize. I'm going to use the word resource a lot. Because that's what the sanctuary is. It is a resource. It is a public resource. It is the national parks of the ocean. The National Marine Sanctuary System comprises of 18 sanctuaries, as far as the recent one in Lake Ontario, all the way out to the Hawaiian Islands, American Samoa, and the Pacific Islands. But for the Flower Garden Bank's National Marine Sanctuary, we're the only sanctuary in the Gulf of Mexico. We're actually one of the northernmost coral reef systems in the Gulf and the Atlantic. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the Flower Garden Banks just working within the Gulf area. I'm not sure if everyone's necessarily heard that we expanded back in 2021 from our original 3 banks of Stetson, west and east to now all 17 banks heading out towards the east, towards New Orleans and Louisiana. And, kind of touching on, a lot of the regional aspects of what GCOOS is. The sanctuary, since its designation back in 1992, has always been really focused on the sanctuary and everything that's within its boundaries. But as we all know, putting lines on a map doesn't really tell the ocean where the boundaries actually are. And one of the things that we've learned as we've expanded and as we're trying to catch up with our monitoring program to reach all 17 banks is that we need to have a more regional look at how we're trying to do things, as opposed to just focusing on our individual banks. I apologize, there's no other slides, you're just gonna have to stare at this map for a while. But so a lot of what we've been doing since 1992, doing our monitoring program as an interagency agreement with BOEM, really is focusing on what's happening on the reef banks in the shallow sections, 20 to 40 meters in depth. And we were using a lot of, diver installed instruments from seabirds to Xylem products, and recently the installation of SOFAR buoys, really trying to capitalize on the real-time telemetry aspect, because it is, as a lot of you know, very difficult to get out 100 miles offshore and beyond to these deeper regions. And for the longest time, we've been collecting the data, but we really haven't done anything effective to archive that data or even share that data beyond just our own internal use. Sure, you could, ask us for the data if we're begrudging about it. You could FOIA us if you wanted to. But we really wanted to, as a resource, the data is also a public resource to all of you as well for this area. And we really wanted to capitalize on that more with the development and integration of new technologies. So one of the early on things that we did when we installed the SOFAR buoys was actually get with GCOOS and helping us to integrate that into the NCEI program. Big props to Feldman. Thank you very much. I know those SOFAR buoys were a giant headache. But, don't worry, we're getting more. But, it's been a great thing. It's been a great use, not only for our individual purposes. We've actually had a lot of people reach out to us since the addition of these SOFAR buoys, not only through GCOOS and getting them on the NCEI. We've actually been reached out through the National Hurricane Center. It turns out that they use these SOFAR buoys to help their models, which we all apparently know are ineffective now. But they've also been a great public resource to the community. I know we've had a lot of conversation about how do we reach out to our communities. While we are still working on it ourselves, one of the biggest benefits that we've heard from constituents in the recreational and commercial fishing industries is these are a great resource for understanding what the conditions are going to be out. Is it worth looking at these faulty models to determine, is it going to be a 2-foot wave or is it going to be a 7-foot wave? It's hard to tell, but the SOFAR buoys that we've had that we've been able to put through on our own dashboard and through the SOFAR dashboard as well has been a very useful product to the community at large. Now, we are looking to expand those. Jorge mentioned that this morning in part of the 5-year GCOOS funding plan. The funding that would be kind of co-opted over to the sanctuary would go to extending the infrastructure for the SOFAR buoys, really trying to reach out onto the eastern side. A lot of what we have just is there on the west, as I mentioned, west, east, and Stetson Bank. We really want to kind of get out into the eastern side, starting with Bright Bank, which is a bit more there central, and then from there, kind of reaching out, going as far as McGrail and Rezac Bank, where we've actually recently installed mooring buoys for additional fishing access. But then, again, expanding on that, as well as addressing the past as well, all of that data that we have been collecting since 1992 that we really haven't done anything with. We've been able to fortunately have some extra hands help us out thanks to GCOOS, both with Sean Reagan and with Kelly Drennan going back through our historical data sets and analyzing those, compiling those, and then getting those archived and passed over to NCEI as well. So we are catching up. We still have many more years to do. We're currently about mid-20 teens, and getting all the way back to 1992 is going to be a bit of a challenge. But we are, again, and I circle back, we are a public resource. All these things that we're trying to do are to your benefit, to the researchers, to the industry, but to the local communities as well, the ones that like to go out and go enjoy the wahoo fishing that happens in January, or the grouper fishing, the snapper fishing. The red snappers are fantastic. But it is, and also for the diving community too. It is for everyone. It is your public resource. I hope everyone can be able to get involved at some point. Go see it. I'm sorry, again, I didn't put pictures of the manta rays or the sea turtles. I don't think anyone's ever seen a rice whale out there, but last reporting is there are white sharks now. There's been a few tags that have pinged off the sanctuary banks with those. But touching on the community aspect, if you want to go ahead and move on to the next slide, I would be amiss if I didn't give you guys some opportunities to join in our community. The first one is that the sanctuary is currently beginning the process of its 10-year management plan review. Now, I will emphasize 10 years. We haven't done a management review since, I think 2012 technically, but this is a time, and the dates that you can see on here, so please take pictures, QR code, I think these are getting shared out as well. These are the public speaking times. So if you want to if you're aware of what we're doing, and you want to see us kind of shift our priorities a little bit, you want to have that input, or if you want to see us doing more to expand within the expanded sanctuary and our research goals, hop in and give us your opinion. Let us know what you think. Add any comments or benefits. This helps improve us, which then gets it back out to everybody else. So I encourage, the first one is a virtual one, so you don't even have to leave your house. But the other two are at our office in Galveston, Texas. Both of those, the May 19th day is also the day of our Sanctuary Council meeting, which I encourage everyone to come and just spend the day with us, which then will actually lead me into my next slide, which is our Sanctuary Advisory Council. And we do in fact have some open seats open right now for enrollment. If you're interested in learning more, Laura here in front is currently on our council, and she can tell you how great and amazing it is. But we do have a few seats open there listed, 2 seats for commercial fishing, a seat for conservation, 2 for education, a recreational fishing seat, and a research seat. So this is another way to get involved, not only with the sanctuary, but with the community at large within that area. We're definitely looking for people that also have some influence in the Louisiana area, which has been a tough one for us to reach out to. But this is, again, another way, if you're in the Galveston area on May 19th, come learn more about what we are, what we do, and getting involved. And then the last one, I don't have a slide for it, but I will mention that we are hosting an open house on May 16th. That's Saturday before, where you can talk to all the staff, learn about everything that we have going on and everything that we plan to do, from our mooring buoy programs to lionfish dissections to our water quality and monitoring efforts, and talking with the council themselves while they're there. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan and Megan. I'm going to show, again, they're really 2 short videos that were submitted to us. And yes, diving is great. So if you have not been, I contributed myself. I vomited every time I took the teachers out to the program. So that was my contribution to your flower gardens. I fed the animals there every single time I get there. Shao, can we get the videos? Okay.
Yeah,
Do you need the microphone so that they can be louder?
let me try. Sorry, the computer is slow.
Has anybody ever been diving at the flower gardens? That's beautiful. Even if you feel seasick, it's still beautiful.
So I'll just say while I was getting up the video, when we did our reporting last year, which the 2024 annual report is out now, we were able to find that the coral coverage at West Bank was actually at 66% coral, not just just coral. East Bank was a little bit lower at about 55%, but that is, as far as we know, kind of communicating with our other partners, is some of the highest coral coverage in a reef that you can see anywhere in the world. So we are one of the more resilient reefs, probably, thankful to our kind of remoteness. But we are a healthy reef, and we remain a healthy reef, even despite bleaching that's becoming more prevalent, and other disease aspects that are inflicting other reefs.
Okay.
Are we good?
I tried under search, not working.
Are we good?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's working. Yeah.
Project entitled AI Method for the Quality Control of Water Level Observation. It's a joint project with GCOOS and NOAA, and here we go. So data quality is very important, of course, and it's even more important now for the calibration of AI models. And so what we need to do is remove virus.
Oh, now you. All right. I'm sorry, it's very slow computer.
Don't want to kill the owl.
Hi, my name is Philip Tissot. I'm at the Conrad Ruther Institute at Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. I'm going to give you a very brief update of a new project entitled AI Methods for the Quality Control of Water Level Observation. It's a joint project with GCOOS and NOAA, and here we go. So data quality is very important, of course, and it's even more important now for the calibration of AI models. And so what we need to do is remove unphysical data points, fill gaps, and for water levels and many other data sets, NOAA Co-ops is the gold standard. They do a great job. They have a team of 9 oceanographers. And so we're asking the question, can AI method reduce human involvement in this process? So the project started last fall. Dr. Tan Lee is the principal science investigator. And the team include Lindsay Abrams and her team at Co-ops, Dr. Jorge Brenner at GCOOS, who you all know well, and Dr. Greg Gusek at Dusek Coastal Science and Consulting. So the project started. Dr. Lay did a trip to co-ops, visited stations. We've had several. We have meetings every 2 weeks with the co-ops team to really look at the data, define the problem. And we are in the midst of testing different AR architectures. You see here a graph of the architectures tested, including tree-based method, multi-layer perceptron transformer, a latent space method based on the JEPA method. And we're going with either direct classification or regression. So it's a broad scope there. On the right, you see some pretty good preliminary results for the JEPA method. We're testing over several NLON stations, including Honolulu, Newport, Port Isabel, Santa Monica, Pier 21, and a few more. We will be presenting the results so far at the DMAC 2026 conference, June 2-4. And also we have a parallel project that is based just for Texas, for the Tikkun historical data, and that is thanks to the Texas General Analog Office. So thanks for listening. Happy 20th birthday to GCOOS, and have all a great meeting.
Heather, Mike?
Yeah.
All right, so we have a couple of discussion points. Megan, if you want to come over here so you can be. Instead of having you guys separated. So we have a couple of discussion prompts. Is there any questions from the audience right now? So I have questions for them, but. And also, oh, we have one? Yes.
DiMarco, GERG. Steve DiMarco from GERG. So, what is the status of the Manta at the Flower Garden Max?
The current status, like right now. So I'm sure there's probably been a bit of rumor. I wouldn't say like in a dramatic sense there's rumors. There was, I will admit, last year there was a significant amount of maintenance work that needed to be done on it that took roughly a year and a half to actually get all the work done and get the boat back in the water. That really did obviously affect our schedule for the summer season and getting offshore. Thankfully we had, when they're not problems, they're just challenges to overcome. And our community that we are in touch with has really stepped onto that. Not only were we chartering the vessel, the MV Fling, the local recreational dive vessel out of Freeport, a lot of our council members who were, commercial recreational fishermen that had vessels took us out. In some cases, they took us out on their own dime, which we really appreciate. For quick day trips, getting things done. We really did have to limp along, but we ultimately got everything we needed to get done. This year, that work package was much smaller. I was happy to say that the ship is out of the shipyard for its annual maintenance. It is back at the Texas A&M Galveston dock. It has I believe it's today, actually, it's going through its fleet inspection. So as long as it's able to check all the boxes off its fleet inspection and it passes, it will be in a sales status and we'll be ready to go. Our first trip happening early June.
Any other questions? All right, so I have a couple of questions for them, and you're more than welcome to chime in as well if you have an answer. The first one is, and maybe Megan, you can take this one. It says, what value is created when different groups use the same trusted data? And I did like, Ben, that you mentioned it was a trustworthy, validated, good science. So what happens when different groups use the same data? You've already alluded a little bit to that, but can you expand?
I think we get a lot of value just out of having a bunch of different perspectives. Specifically for cetaceans and sea turtles, people are going to be looking at different things. So we have some groups that are just looking at where are the populations. Some groups are looking more at what are the long-term trends, what are different price sources for them? How do they respond to different environmental factors? So everybody's coming at it from a different perspective, and having the same data source used, even just from a cost perspective. Okay, that's only one time that we are having to collect these observational data sets that then everybody can use for their different impacts. So that's freeing up funding to go do a bunch of different things and maybe make these observations for different species or in different areas, which is really useful. The more we investigate a singular data set, the more insights we're going to get, and then we can also share that with the communities and the public. And when we have a better understanding of it, it helps us communicate that with the public and our communities better and more clearly as well.
Right, did you have anything?
Yeah, one of the things that NOS, the National Ocean Service, is doing at large right now is going through and doing economic impact analysis for all of the sanctuaries. Something that's much easier to do for, say, national parks, where you can, have ticketed prices. You actually can get much more easily a numerical value. It's a lot more difficult with, open ocean, open water body, where it's difficult to track who's going in and using those resources. So expanding out kind of beyond the data. Obviously, the data is valuable, and that's a hard thing to quantitate, because if it's getting out to the public and it's getting out to the recreational fishers, who are then using that data to go out and pay for the gas for their boats, pay for fishing gear, like all of those things get tied in to the larger economic impact of it, which is, as you mentioned, it's difficult to do for an ocean service, but NOS at large is looking to try and get out some numbers, and that's for all sanctuaries. I know they're currently working with ours right now to determine that.
Thanks, Ryan. So I had another question, and I can contribute to this one as well, because we're doing something currently in our community. It says, in what ways can collaboration lead to more access, equitable access to information and stronger decision making? One of the things, Ren was an NAS fellow that came to GCOOS and did an amazing job with, if you have not looked at it, so I suggest you do that, is a heat waves portal and the worksheets or the fact sheets that came with that. So working in my community, we have a lot of local decision makers that need kind of that information to make those decisions, but it goes clearly against our unhoused community. When are we seeing these heat waves, making the decisions to keep a lot of the cooling centers open, and the need to actually not close them down, because in my local community, a lot of the public resources are being taken away. So if we can come in with scientific data, and I can talk to them because I understand what we're talking about with heat waves, then that gives us, again, it's a tool. It's a powerful tool to make informed science-based decisions as to why we should keep these cooling centers open, as to why we need to be careful with kids being out there. There's a lot of medical information. We work with local doctors at Driscoll to talk about what happens when kids are exposed to extreme heats and how that affects learning. So again, looking at public health connections, and GCOOS has that data. I don't have to collect it. I don't have to research it. I don't have to make a fact sheet about it. It's already available to us. And if they don't trust me, they should trust all of the science and the brains in this room, because again, it's validated, trusted data that we can use. Okay. Do y'all have any contributions? For decision making, definitely for Florida, I think, or just for like.
I think also providing the access to that data, you can give somebody the results and the conclusions from it, but depending on how long you've spent building a relationship with these communities, they might not necessarily trust that. So being able to give them both the conclusions and then also access to the data so that they can see how we got those conclusions, I think that really helps build that trust and encourages them to use the data to their own ability and for their own needs as well.
I mean, yeah, obviously sharing the access to our data in general is great from a management standpoint. as I alluded to with the management plan review that we're going through right now and showcasing the data that we have collected over the last 14 years now. But I would also iterate that, especially for a site like ours, that physical access is difficult too. Not everyone has access to a boat that can get out there, let alone the money to charter a boat themselves. Really finding creative ways to get that data into the community is a big part, oftentimes through storytelling. You can throw numbers at people all day long. They're not going to care. But if you can connect with them and tell a story about this site, about how it's important and it's beautiful, but also how does it connect to you? We may be a site that's 100 miles offshore, but man, we still get river discharge from the Mississippi Basin. Like, people up in the Midwest dumping stuff in the waterways will eventually make it out to those areas and have impacts on them. So really trying to take the data and turn it into a story and a means to connect to the larger base, I think, is where the larger value is. And especially, we're talking about, how do we connect with people and help them understand and learn about GCOOS. It's trying to find those stories and that connection.
So I just met Ryan today, and we're totally on the same wavelength because I was going to end with data storytelling. Data does tell stories. It just depends on how you are telling that story. We're having a conversation with Megan as we wrap up here, how a lot of, at least back in my day, I had to choose. So but I didn't choose, but I kind of did my own thing. They're like, you need to either do your science or you need to do education. And I'm like, I don't understand why they're separated, because I've been to Hawaii, Rhode Island, Texas, wherever to take a meeting, and it's the same people. So while it's amazing to present to each other, we need to be presenting outside of that circle. And like Ryan put it so beautifully, there are stories to tell with the data that we're collecting. And I think somebody asked earlier during the industry, I don't know who it was, of like, how do we communicate the value of the GCOOS data and IUS and everything else? You also have to find what value means to you. So there's a dollar amount, but then there's that amount of, if the rice whale goes extinct, like your kids, my grandkids won't ever see that. So how do you put a value on that? So that's something to think about too. And that storytelling through different means provides an opportunity to do that. I definitely, like, young people, like, you guys are on the social things. I still struggle to put Instagram, and I'm really trying. But we do a lot of science communication workshops with graduate students, undergraduate, graduate, PhD, postdocs, to encourage them, yes, to learn how to communicate their science, but also how to work collaboratively with people who know how to do that. There are educators, there are professional science communicators. That is a job. If we had more of those in here to look at all the data that we're taking, how powerful would that be to tell the story of what GCOOS is doing? We're not just a data provider, we're a network of individuals, and we have relationships with each other. So I do encourage you, if you are writing grants, I know money is it's getting pretty low, but at the same time, what are you investing to get what you're doing out and beyond the group, beyond your circle, so that the data keeps going on and it keeps telling those stories of our Gulf. Thanks again. I hope you guys enjoyed it. One more. He's new, and so I give you another question.
Thank you. I just had to add this. Christy is pushing me there. Thanks. I love your discussion on engagement and getting things out. But as I learned in Alaska, working on the North Slope of Alaska with the Inuit, it is a two-way street. What I learned is, for example, up there in Alaska, indigenous knowledge and science has to be treated as equal. And so when you go into communities, ask what they have seen, what they observed, what they thought. They may not have the background to evaluate your data, but talking to parents and grandparents that have lived there for a long time and have experienced the changes is something you can't put a price on. And so just remember that in the engagement, it goes both ways. And some of the stuff you're going to receive in this engagement will not be the kind of stuff we're used to working with. Sometimes, as I learned, the story from a senior elder whaler is just as valuable as a data boy. They have the historical context we don't have.
I think we're going to be good friends. I say that because we just got a grant for that, and in my indigenous community, that's what we talk about, is the fact that our ancestors have observed these patterns for thousands of years, not decades, not hundreds, but thousands. And that is literally equal. The indigenous science of what they do is just as valid as that. But finding, again, that collaborative network, and again, a respect and responsibility for each other, how can we work together? Because this is amazing data, but what they bring to the table is also just as valid. So thank you, appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Sometimes take a bow, but they just look at me weird.
I just want to, hello. I just want to thank all of our presenters for our sessions.
I think I turned you off.
Can you hear me now? No, that's okay. I don't need it. I'll yell. You know, as a multi-sector organization, we all collect data that are used for very different purposes and goals. And I think, you know, sometimes the communities can perceive those goals and data uses as conflicting. I think we're in a really unique position where we can work on the message of shared purposes and shared goals with data use. And so this is a conversation that I would like to see continue because we have conservation, resource management, industry-driven data goals, and we can meet in the middle on that. And I think developing some shared language for data use and the value of that is a position that we're sort of uniquely in to put together with all of the people at the table. So I want to thank everyone again for that. And we're going to head into a break for about half an hour. And so I will give you like a 2-minute warning call when I need you to come back in. And thanks again to everyone for the presentation so far and the great discussion. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you back in about a half an hour. So, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's I came to see the different photo. I don't know.
It's just like the
I just don't think like some people you gotta do enough blood. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
Hey, Jorge.
Sure, I will. If you want participate.
Oh, okay. So you were the one putting them up there? Yeah. We'll see how it goes.
There's a bunch of people. Hey.
Great job so far.
Yes.
The energy is going down.
And I'm going to walk on.
So I have a question, kind of, I'm not saying anything. We,
lab. I'm wondering what kind of access wave GUIs that we are not going to use anymore. It's fairly new.
This conference will now be recorded.
You want to know,
Perhaps
this
more
group
than you
of
want to
fine
know.
oceanographers, who are going to provide us what they've been doing for the UGOS project. So this panel is about, and Steve is here with us now. This panel is about the UGOS project that is being funded for 15 years by the National Academies and the GRP program. Very good. Thank you. UGOS project is understanding the Gulf Ocean system. It's an investment made by National Academies and the GRP to fill important gaps in the physical oceanography understanding of the Gulf. Currently, it's their 5-year cycle ending next year. We're going to hear more details of all about this. The purpose for today is to understand what has been done for UGOS and what's next for UGOS. We're going to hear first from Michael Feldman, who's coming from Washington and the National Academies. He's the program manager for the GRP for the UGOS program. Dr. Tony Knap, we're going to hear, he's one of the PIs of the UGOS at GERG, and he's been leading the stakeholder engagement work packet of that project for the last 4.5 years. Dr. Rafael Ramos, he's one of the PIs and representatives of the industry working in that project as well. We're going to hear from him the industry perspective of the project, and also from Dr. Steve DiMarco, who is one of the technical leads and more specifically the lead of one of the main experiments conducted throughout the last 4 years called the Master Experiment. So the first speaker will be Michael. Go ahead.
All right, this is great. I'll stand back here. So UGOS has come up a bunch of times throughout the meeting. So they'll be interactive later when you ask questions, and this is the other interactive part. Who has not heard of UGOS? Raise your hand. Just spell them on, which is a problem. So we have some data gaps we need to do. Well, that's great. So just right up front, this was the goal from the very beginning, and I really want to emphasize it was focused on improving the skill of sustained continuous operational forecast. That was what we set out to do. That was an incredibly ambitious goal at the time, and I think we've made a tremendous amount of progress on that. And you all know UGOS, and you understand the importance of loop current. So the bottom part of that is pretty self-explanatory. So let's go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so as Jorge was saying, so this is by the end of next year will be 10 years over 3 funding cycles of UGOS. It's been a really fascinating evolution. I'm not going to get into details about that, but the total investment from the Gulf Research Program from beginning to end is going to be $40 million, which is quite a nice investment. One thing I will say about this, which is incredibly special to me, so any program officer, you always want to, you set out to do a large project like this with a lot of money behind it, but you want to leverage that. And you want to try and get, more return on investment. That's part of the making the decisions here. This 40 million, I mean, and what's special about this is it's been the passion of folks like Steve and Rafael and Tony and everyone else who works on this. They've put in so much more time and effort than they've been paid to do for this, and that's been this sort of secret sauce behind this whole thing. So this is a incredibly successful project from my standpoint, because we've been able to leverage this 40 million to talk a lot about how hard it is to quantify and value things. It's a lot higher than that. So go to the next slide. Okay, so those got a little weird, but that's okay. So a few of the advancements that I just wanted to highlight, and we've heard this throughout the whole day today. Some people say, well, I'm an observationalist and I'm a modeler, and never the two shall shall meet. That's a real thing, but through this project, we've been able to really close that gap. So that should be a two-way arrow back and forth. But the first UGOS meeting we had, the people who, I said, well, what do we need to observe? And their observational said, I can observe anything you want. Just tell me what it is. And I'm like, all right, well, modelers, what do you want to model? They're like, I can model anything you want. Just give me the data. And they were talking past each other. So now they are working together, and Steve's going to talk a little bit about that when he gets to the master program, because that was the only way that would work. The whole community here, when UGOS started, it was pretty fractured. We've heard about a lot of people wanting to go it on their own. It is a very nice, coherent group right now. And then the other key thing, which Tony's going to talk about a bit, is at the beginning, stakeholders were not terribly engaged, but through persistence and through good science and good ambassadors for the program, I'd like to say they're very engaged right now and very interested in what happens. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so now some of the things that I can say that we have done. We've demonstrated that adaptive sampling is absolutely possible. In the Gulf, we've been able to use adaptive sampling and data and assimilate that into models. And then a big part of our decision making and how we decide where to go next is these model intercomparisons. And so the entire team is looking at the NOAA model, the Navy model, the European model, the industry model, and based on all the information and the best available information that we can find, there are decisions that are being made as a group together as to what to do next. That's been really special. Let's go to the next one. So a couple other things. The partnership between particularly our Mexican colleagues and our American colleagues through this has been absolutely critical. This project wouldn't have gone anywhere without that. And just to see how seamless that's been has been certainly one of, I think, the legacy items of this project. We've also had industry and academia and government engaged in collaborating all together. We all want to do the same thing, have better predictions on what the loop current's doing and where it's going to go. And so everyone's come together to try and do this. We have a very strong early career research network. If you're going to spend 10 years and $40 million, you better train some people through that process at a minimum. And so all the leaders of the project up here with me, they've embraced that, and we've actually forced early career folks to partner with more senior scientists on a lot of these projects. And then data archives, and I know data's going to come up. Feldman hopefully knows what UGOS is right now. But if you go to the next slide for a second, but we put together, Feldman put together this UGOS.info. The reason for this was we needed a single place where all the UGOS scientists could get all the information they needed. This was very much a self-serving activity, but this is freely available to everyone. Anyone can go and take as much data as you'd like. Feldman will track it all. And I think one of the things we need to talk about is also the transition from this. So this has been really helpful, and this is a way to protect our investment from the GRP, especially the last couple of years when some data started becoming a little harder to find. And so that was something that we had to do, and I think it's turned into a really valuable tool. Go to the next one. Thank you. So what's next? And this is what Jorge really wanted to talk about. Well, so we're going to wrap up at the end of 2027. So right now we're very much into analysis, modeling, and documentation. We collected a ton of data over 2 field campaigns and over the last 10 years. So that's now everyone's putting their head down and they're writing and they're analyzing. We're going to prepare for our next and final UGOS annual meeting. That's going to be in DC in September of 2026. We started 5 years ago in DC. We're going to come back to DC the in-between years. We went to where the 3 main hubs were. That was in Tallahassee at Florida State, and a lot of modelers there. We're here at GERG. We had an awesome time at GERG, and here at Texas A&M, and we're up in Woods Hole last year. We're going to continue this emphasis on stakeholder engagement and transition. This is absolutely critical. We're not starting now. We've been doing this for years. Tony's going to talk about that and a lot of effort he's put into that. For those of you who remember Gomer, there was this big synthesis issue that came out after Gomer. Well, this project really, it suits well for this. So when in the fall of 2027, We're going to have a special issue of Oceanography magazine. I think we're only at 13 chapters right now, but there's a lot to tell and there's a lot to say. And I think in addition, it'll be a great complement to all the other scientific papers and analysis that goes on through this project. And then when that comes out, we're also going to hold a capstone event in DC to really celebrate what we've learned over the last 10 years. So the Oceanography magazine and that final event will happen at the exact same time, which is cool timing for us. And then last one, and this part, this gets back to this leverage thing. It really does take a village. So sort of like the GCOOS photo we tried to do, there are a lot of people that have been involved in this, that are passionate about this, that have gone above and beyond to make this work. And so with that, I want to say thank you guys. Thanks to everyone here who's done any part, contributed data or asked us good questions or helped advise us on where to go. But where we are right now is it's really stakeholders and wrapping this stuff up and how do we transition these things. So there's nothing that's lost as the GRP steps away from that. So that's what I had to say, and pass it to Tony next.
I had to sit down because I played golf for the first time in 7 years yesterday. My legs are worn out. So thank you, Michael. And there is a cup going around. And if you could put your loose change in it, Steve and I and Rafael would really appreciate it. That would be very helpful. Anyway, I'm going to talk about stakeholder engagement, and it's sort of tough to talk about stakeholder engagement with a massive group of stakeholders because you probably know more about it than I do, but I'm going to try. Next slide. So the stakeholder engagement for UGOS really started with Gulf Cores, which is a Gulf Consortium for Offshore Risk Reduction, and engaging stakeholders was part of our title. So the idea was to reach out to people in the industry, in industry in general, and some we didn't know, and then use our connections with various agencies to try to build a program together. We created a thing called GCAB, which is Gulf Cores Advisory Board for Stakeholders. Now, if you're in College Station, where do you think you find stakeholders? I'll tell you, in a steakhouse, because a steakhouse holds stakeholders. So there's a really good restaurant down University Road called The Republic. In fact, we were going to go there last night. And in that room on Tuesday night, which would be, I don't know, about an hour and a half from now, there's an end table, which is about 20 seats. And it holds a load of stakeholders. In fact, what it is, Texas A&M produces so many people in the oil and gas industry. They all meet there from 9 to 2 on Tuesday nights at 5 o'clock. We have a glass of Cab Franc and we talk about the importance of UGOS. But what we got was Xavier Williams and Bodley Thornton, it's a real name, both senior executives for Noble Oil. And they opened the doors to us to a number of stakeholders. The other thing we did, which we've been doing for a very long time, Steve, his students, I, and others, since I left Bermuda and came here for the weather, the offshore technology meeting in Houston every year allows us to find lots of stakeholders. If any of you have been to that or have not been to that, I would recommend it. There used to be like 120,000 people. With the oil industry changing, there's maybe about 30,000 people. That's still plenty. And Rafael knows every one of them. So next slide. Everyone. So this is the original members. You can see that up on the slide. So we worked out, in fact, these were the people who were included in the proposal that were part of the stakeholder agreement. They all agreed to be part of the board. So what I can talk about now is what the legacy aspect of this whole program is. Can I have the next slide? So this is the outline of the special issue, and this is the table of contents. And so the introduction is going to be written by me, because I was head of Working Group 1, which is stakeholder engagement. Steve DiMarco, who's head of Working Group 2, which is engaging transition to operation. And Scott Glenn, who's been helping us out throughout, but mainly with agencies. Then the oil and gas industry is Jim Steer from Chevron, Sergio Armilo, and Dr. Eskinkoff from ExxonMobil. I should say that these are just leads. And one of the things we're missing in this whole program is early career scientists and a number of other organizations and industries. And these, I think the author list for these chapters is could be in the hundreds, right? I mean, because everyone's been involved in everything. So search and rescue, we've had great help and activity with the U.S. Coast Guard. Christina Forbes and I are going to do that. Mid-Ocean Consultants, Rafael Ramos is leading that. Because again, these are leads. And I spoke to the RPS and FUGRO people today, and they're going to be listed on this soon. IOS Regional Associations, Jorge has agreed to take that. Hurricane prediction is in bold because there's going to be a separate chapter on hurricane prediction. And Scott Glenn and Wallace Hogseth from the National Hurricane Center are going to run that or lead that. Navy prediction improvement, Scott Glenn from Rutgers, Neil Jacobs from NRL, who's retired, and Joe Calantoni from the Navy. I should also say that we invited a lot of these people to our annual meetings. And so we've got to know these people very well. For physical oceanography, Pat Hogan, who could ask for more? And NOAA Fisheries, they're going to have their own chapter too. Anna Voss and Mandy, Karnofskas, whatever. International collaboration is people from UNAM who've been running the radars for the last 5 years, the HF radars. And I'd like to send a shout out to GCOOS, because what we were looking for is transitioning some of these measurements. And GCOOS have agreed very, this is better than we could ever hope, to keep these radars funded, because this radars through the strait are just incredible. And then a conclusion. Last slide. So these are the questions. How did UGOS contribute to each of your stakeholder interests? How did you contribute? How did UGOS maintain engagement, and why were you engaged? What was novel or new about UGOS, and what do we know that we didn't know? And what are the recommendations for remaining gaps and continuing efforts? The schedule is pretty light. The first outline is June, first draft submitted is November, manuscript submitted is January 15th, 2027, and May 15th, the proofs will be delivered, and then it will be published. But I would encourage all of you to get in touch with me if you want to be involved. And early career scientists, we really need you to play an important role in this, because the mantle has to be handed over. Thank you. See you.
Okay. Shall follow my cues. Okay? Yeah. Okay, thanks. So, hi, it's DiMarco, and you're about to bring up my slides. It's open. Sorry. What was the cue? Well, it was only like 400 megabytes. That's weird. About 40 slides, and I think I had 48 minutes. No.
Yeah. I've seen you do it before. Though.
Yeah, I'll be quick.
And while we have just, what Tony was just talking about was not the full table of contents for the whole issue. That was focused on the stakeholder section. So.
Thank you. How's the cup doing?
I'm sorry. Is the bumblebee in there?
Of course it is.
It's not a huge animation together.
This is why we needed a separate special Google Drive just for UGOS things. It was too big to pass around. So.
Just for mass crossing, you can do interpretive dance.
That's fine.
Oh,
Yeah, there's
I'm
only.
sorry. Interested? Yeah. Yeah.
I could dance if you want.
I think everyone should have another coffee.
How about they?
Very a fan from Rafael.
Oh, they already have.
Yeah, but
Someone else.
All right, Steve, your time's up.
You know, they pay me to talk. Well, what the slides would say, you were actually able to see it. It would start off with just an introduction, but with my name, and then the very next slide is not my name because there's a huge team associated with this work. And so, okay, so that's looking like it's a thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's my name.
Oh. Wait. It's just too slow, sorry.
It's over here.
Yes.
Maybe you should go to the.
Just go ahead. Okay. I can see it over here, but not over there.
So you can see it.
All right. Okay, so go to the next slide.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
But it's not changing over there.
It's changing. It's the second slide.
Yeah, but look at over there on the right screen.
Oh.
Yeah, only this one is in presentation mode.
Sorry.
You broke the system. I broke the system. Well, not the first time.
Any questions in the meantime?
Sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Stephen, can you start presenting from this side over here and just everyone focus on this piece and then we can move you forward?
I could do that.
Thank you. Sorry about the technical
I'm sorry.
difficulties.
Yeah, if you can, okay, so what I'm going to talk about here is some of the technical aspects of what the UGOS team has been doing. And really what I wanted to show on this slide is that there's a giant amount of folks involved. And so even, so these were all transition slides because the third slide really takes my name out because I really wanted to highlight the folks that are part of this. It's not about me, even though sometimes it's about me. It's not about me, and it's about really this team and how we work together. And just like what Michael Feldman was saying, it was a marriage of very different expertise that was put together for this whole project. So,
next one.
Yeah, come down to number 4.
Okay.
Shall stop sharing. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
And then Steve can run it live over there.
Yes, number 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's better.
Everybody online, Steve?
Okay.
Sorry.
There you go. Now you have control.
So, yeah, okay. So, good. So, thank you. So, let me make it online so I can get to the 4th slide here. Here we go. Okay, so this is the 4th slide. So with this one, it's just showing what Michael had showed before, what the litany was, but really this came out of this consensus report that was published in 2017, 2018, and really I wanted to emphasize the goal here, which was to advance understanding of the loop current dynamics, improve forecast and predictive skill, and reduce risk. So the next slide has the UGOS roadmap. We do have a roadmap here, and it starts on the left side with a yellow box that says stakeholders. So if you look at this.
Hey, Steve, you want to pause for 1 second?
Yes, I can pause.
Fix this real quick. Hold on.
Marcus has become my PhD graduate, so part of his prelim is to.
That chance.
His first assignment is not really that good. Good?
No. Hold on, that's not what I wanted to do, sorry. Too many monitors. Too many monitors. Perfect.
Okay. That looks like it. That looks like it might work. So, so the yellow box is stakeholders. This project really begins with stakeholders, right? It's all about them, and because in the end, it's going to be how do you get those things that we understand to the people that need it. And so that becomes the stakeholder box moving into the blue box, which is where all the observations and numerical modeling exercises are. There's OSSIs and OSSIs associated with this. This program called MASTER, which is the Mini Adaptive Sampling Test Run, is part of that. It's in that blue box. There is the GRACE, which is the Grand Adaptive Sampling Experiment, which followed MASTER. But that blue box leads down into a transition to operations pathway, and I want to know if folks know what that means, and all the industry folks, and maybe the students not so much know what that means. But it's how do we get that, all the things that we found out into an operational setting. So, and then the finish line is getting actual transition to operations. So, so that's really what our roadmap was from the very beginning. What MASTER was in 2024 and 2025 was GRACE. Have the dates on that, but there was a lot of observations. It was a tremendous effort to coordinate that many observations together in one targeted location, which was the inflow-outflow region of the Gulf of Mexico, plus the loop current separation region in the Southeast Gulf, and lots of numerical modeling output. We had the Navy part of that. We had the European Union as part of that. We had NOAA through RTOS part of that. There was the industry models too through CLS, as Rafael indicated earlier. But there's also research models at FSU, so Florida State, North Carolina State, so that's working his group, and SSA, that's with Julio Scheinbaum. Lots of State Department activity that had to be done. Like I cannot tell you, almost 2 years of working with the State Department, with the U.S., the Mexicans, and the Cubans to really get all the permissions to fly gliders in their EEZs during these experiments. Sometimes it was like every day there would be a call with the State Department. This is showing where the observations of this particular set of slides shows where the gliders work for the MASTER and for the GRACE experiment was, and let's see if I press play on that. This is what's has become known as the Bumblebee video, because there is a soundtrack associated with this that shows it's the Bumblebee Flight of the Bumblebee song. There is a soundtrack, but you don't have to turn it up, and it's not moving right now. But anyway, what that would show if it was actually moving would be, let's see, let me see if this, oh, there it is. So this is showing the Yucatan area of the entryway into the Gulf, and it's showing how the gliders are flying. It's also that green patch there is the high frequency radar work now of what we, as part of this project, put in to measure the surface currents in real time every hour. So, so you can see it flash in, flash off, but you can see we're getting very good coverage in that area. And you can see that then we repeated all this again in the GRACE experiment. But not only did we target the inflow region, but we more targeted the separation region in the Gulf. So you can see all that in there. You can even see when the Rocus overflight from Fugro came in and left and exited. There was floats that were here. Argo floats came in. There were surface drifters that which whole group put in as well. But I would say that there was multiple glider missions from the CSSA group, so from the Mexicans, from Texas A&M, and from Rutgers. So we all contributed to that. And I also need to say that every time one of the gliders crossed into the Cuban EEZ, that generated an email that said, "We're crossing into your EEZ," that was sent to about 25 people, including the Cuban military. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So one of the things that we have to do here is to assess impact. And so what this graphic is showing here is the differences between having data assimilation of the gliders in the numerical models and without having the gliders assimilated. So the middle panel here is the TS diagram, so just the vertical structure of temperature salinity as shown by the gliders, and that's what's shown with the blue line there. And the orange here is what the numerical model, in this particular case, this is the High Common Florida State model showing it. And the region where these temperature and salinity profiles were taken was down here with the Mexican glider here off of Yucatan, off of Cozumel. If you run the model again, you have data assimilation, the model gets better because it's being trained by the data that's actually there. And you can see in this graphic over here, the blue and the orange line up much better. This is not rocket science to show this, and the thing is, it shows the importance of having that. 15 years ago or 10 years ago, when Pat Hogan was still at NRL, every time I flew a glider, he would call me and say, "You're flying a glider? Tell me that it's in the water. It makes my model better." That was the transition. So this is showing just pretty much the same graphic, but this time in the loop current separation region, showing again with and without data assimilation. And it's really the bottom line is here, doesn't really matter in the Gulf. You fly a glider, you get good TS, you make the model better. One of the things that I wanted really to do that was show, and so Shalka, who is sitting over here, made this animation, because I wanted to see what this looked like spatially. So, so these are three different models, and then there's a composite on the lower right here, showing where do the observations improve the model. So, and so what this is showing here is what lights up in different colors is what the root mean square differences are between not having the gliders and having the gliders assimilated. And this is saying with pretty much certainty that where the gliders are, they improve the model or have the most impact on the model. And the places where there is no gliders, like over here in Campeche or over on the Texas-Louisiana shelf, there is no impact. However, there is persistence of these observations in the model. So after a few days, you can still see the impact of having those observations. And that is the key to understanding what the systems are doing and getting better prediction. There was a lot of different things that were put together during this project too, and a lot of this had to do with different products that came out. So what we have here is this, what we were calling the traffic light map here, showing, and Rafael had alluded to this earlier by saying, where is the 1.5 knot line? That's the line, the 75 centimeter per second line that has impact to drilling operations offshore. So you can see the black line here is the line that comes out of what the analysis that this whole group does. But the colors here are from the numerical model here. And so so the yellows, the oranges, and the reds show different categories of what the currents are. It's another product that came out and was really inspired by the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center because it was like using their predictions for where the tropical storm winds are. Yeah, 1 more minute. One more. I can do one more. So unprecedented achievements, end-to-end demonstrations of diplomacy to logistics, to collection, to dissemination, to ingestion. Already talked about the special issue in oceanography. How is success measured? DATA is what how success is measured here. Data. Remember this. If there's anything that, if you remember anything, remember this. Always, never. Remember this. The data are our gift to the future. Future generations, they don't care what paper I wrote or what my each index is, but they will care about what the data is that we're being collected. So I'm at the end here. So collect data, not dust. That is our motto at GERG. And so there's a beautiful scene on the buoy. However, I do have this slide too. Sometimes, though, it's a bit chaotic out there in the ocean, and so I'm just saying that was generated with Gemini AI. So, and I'm using it. So anyway, that's all I have, and I'll turn it over to my colleague Rafael.
Just run the other slides here. Okay. It's on. It's everything's running from here, roughly.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yep. Okay. We have talked about UGOS and sort of a brief overview of the program. What it was not mentioned is that there is over 100 people working in these activities, right? All of them scientists, engineers, oceanographers, and the combining of all those people that Michael alluded to in like one sentence was a couple of more than 6 months of actually interaction and meetings. And that morphed. Originally, as it was mentioned before, it was 3 consortia. Then it became 6 groups named by number. And then some of those groups were divided into letter groups. And this is where we stand as of yesterday, right? We have working group 1 and 2, which is led by Steve and Tony, and then some other groups there. And then we had also a cross task force dedicated to metrics. And then these are the 2 experiments that Steve alluded to. So Woods Hole Group -CLS is participating in everything that you see that is blue, and then somewhat participating in what is light blue, and then not really participating in what is light, the lightest shedding, right? So we have been working very intensely along with our colleagues, and we also, every time we need to justify what we're doing these things, right? People think about the service companies and as these people are not scientists, they don't know what they're doing, they're just doing it for the money. But that's not quite true. We do a lot of science as well, applied research, right? For example, we have done several several developments on the transition to operations that Steve showed in his presentation. And it is based on trying to make sense of all this research that has been developed, basic research in UGOS, and make it available to stakeholders, right? Our main stakeholder is oil and gas, but that doesn't mean that there's no other people that can benefit from this, right? Some of the things that we've done is defining some indexes of what model is doing, to assess what model is doing better from a specific location, a rig, let's call it, right? Which model is doing better for this week or next week or next week. And a lot of other metrics that hopefully will help us in understanding what, or having a better estimate of when the eddy is going to shed, including the choking point, the length of the eddy, and the roundness of it, and many other metrics. We're also working with clustering of several eddy states or current system states in the Gulf. The idea is to create statistics and to see how we can move from one state to the next, and hopefully have a better understanding of, if a shedding event is coming. We also earlier today talked about the 1,600 plus transects that were donated to the program. This is the result of what the current looks like, right? This is the leading edge on the left and the trailing edge on the right. So the eddies are not symmetric, and that's how they look. We also developed something we call analog forecasting, which is basically something that was brought up earlier in some of the presentations. You basically have your current state, the orange line here, and then you browse into your historical data set and find what shapes look alike, right? And with those, then you see how they evolved over time, and then you do a forecasting, right? It's just as valid as really doing something else. You can say, well, I have 3 analogs. This is the best fit, and then draw some conclusions from that. Or you can select 10, 15, 20 events and then do statistics, right? So we're working on that. We're also working on providing some uncertainty for this 1.5 isotac, which is very important to formal comparisons. We also did a lot of data procurement and support. We provide access to our visualization tool. We deploy drifters for the program. We provided also access to our best estimate of what the 1.5 isotac is. We provided our best mounted ADCP. Fugro provided theirs. RPS provided theirs, and that's what made up the 1,600. And then we also did purpose-fit deployments of drifters. And our proprietary model was also transitioned, a version of it, to Florida State so they can do testing. It's basically HICOM plus a simulation methodology called Thesis, which was developed also by us with our money and is now public domain. And we're also doing a lot of data transfer to entities such as the Jet Propulsion Laboratory for calibration of their missions like SWAT. We're also doing a lot of validation and skill assessment. This is just a portion of it.
Rafael, I'm sorry, 1 minute.
Okay. Yeah, this is my last one. So we did a lot of comparisons with all the data that was collected and the model that came to that, and a lot of transition to operations. Some of those things it's worth pointing out that we are now deploying drifters from the Yucatan. So we're now sampling an area that was undersampled till recently. All this area here. We are doing reachability maps to come. That's from Pierre team at MIT that we hope to integrate into this. And the tools for sampling optimization, and the list keeps just growing. It's a lot that has been developed by UGOS, and we hope to transition it for stakeholders. If you're interested in any of that, please reach out.
Thank you so much, Rafael. Thank you, everyone, for providing these super interesting presentations about everything that has happened. We are 10 minutes late, so I don't know if we have any time for questions.
We can take a couple questions.
Okay, so the next 5 minutes, how about we take 1 or 2 questions? We'll pass it to you. We'll allow you guys to ask any question that you have. Sergio?
Maybe for Steve. So from the gliders that were deployed in the Yucatan versus the gliders that are deployed in the separation area of the loop current, if you had to keep one of them for the future, which one would you pick that would create the most improvement in the whole modeling area?
It's a no-brainer for me, Yucatan.
I wanted to
No-brainer. Absolutely. That's the greatest impact. Keep them in the Yucatan.
We also have the radars.
So I'm pretty familiar with the R2O, the transition process, but a lot of it seems a bit aspirational at this point. And, all the money's spent in UGOS, and I said, well, if you're interested, contact us. We'd love to transition some of these things. How can we be a bit more proactive, or when UGOS ends and there's nobody stands up to take ownership of a particular transition? I'm wondering how we can preserve the investment or force a transit. I'm trying to say not force a transition, but yeah, I'm worried about a lot of that investment not having a catcher's mitt somewhere further downstream.
No, and that's an excellent question, Pat. And so, and one of the reasons why I started with the goal of the whole program is transition was not in there. That's been something that we've encouraged from the very beginning, from the National Academy standpoint. We would love to see a lot of this keep going forward. But having tried to do this with large programs in the past, no one's going to come along and take, oh, I'll just pick it up from here. So it's all these little things, and you heard from Rafael about all these things that they've picked up and they've added to what he does based on Pierre's work and other people's work, and so I think a lot of this is going to be transitioned just because this group has been so collaborative. The things I want to see is I want to see, the data's key. All the data will be preserved and will be available. But I want to see things like, Steve and Tony and Amy Bauer, Woods Hole, who didn't work together previously, but now are working together on a regular basis. That's a really important transition here that we're not capturing. So I think when we first started, we were thinking, NOAA might be the best, but things have changed, so NOAA, the Navy and industry, and it was never going to all be one package that goes across. But I think part of why we wanted to present on a lot of this today, and happy to talk to anyone afterwards and in the coming next 18 months as well, is there are going to be aspects of this that are going to be of interest and of value to different people all in this room. And I think that's going to be realistically our best chance of transition.
Just one more thing. Most of my career, which has been quite long, I've always used this phrase, flawed model, perfect ocean. But I think you could see that when you can get the glider data, and so like 4 glider missions through the Yucatan Strait every year would not be very expensive, and it will bring all those models back in alignment. So that is huge value for money. And we didn't know you could put a number on that now. So I think that's a big step.
Thank you, Tony. One last question. Does anyone has any last question? Or any questions?
Well,
Hearing none, the panel is gonna be here for the rest of the afternoon, so, we should
Just
be able to
bring
continue
us
the
drinks where we are. We'll just stay right here.
Has the cup made it all the way around?
Got lost.
Thank you so much, Tony, Michael, Steve, and Rafael.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I am very pleased to introduce our last speaker of the afternoon. We have a very special presentation from Dr. Worth Nolan, who's a distinguished professor emeritus currently here at TAMU. Worth has been engaged in TAMU and GCOOS for very, very many years. Back in 1998, Worth was the founding director as a TAMU professor for the U.S. Global Ocean Observing System Steering Committee, which laid the foundation for the development of GCOOS. And so Worth became our founding chair of the GCOOS board, I think right around 2005. And I don't want to give any spoilers for his presentation, but he is going to share some of the history of GCOOS that has led to the successful organization that we are today. So Worth, very many thanks for being here. I understand you do not have slides, so this might go fairly smoothly.
I won't have to stop it.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
That's it.
Thank you.
I want to thank Jorge for inviting me to come to this meeting. And my presentation is going to be much shorter than what they have scheduled. I give you my view of the formation of GCOOS. And this includes a period of time from 2002 to about 2013. It includes starting in...
I'm sorry, do you wanna get the mic closer to you?
Not working?
You gotta talk into it.
Oh,
There we go.
okay. It includes the start in New Hampshire and ending in Texas. And it includes starting with just a simple concept and ending with a 503c corporation set up to be your regional association and run your observing system. So it's had a lot of changes in a short period of time there. But I will tell you that the changes that I see that have been made since I dropped out of this thing are phenomenal. You know, you've done a great job, somebody, or all of you. And it's quite different from the way it was when I left. Now to start here, first I'll say Dr. Peter Cornelian is a professor of oceanography at the University of Rhode Island. In 1999, he had a research group that was working on software that, when installed in servers, allowed someone at one server to query what data was in another server and pick out exactly what they wanted and extract it. And that was new at that time. That was funded by the Office of Naval Research. And I feel sure the reason the Office of Naval Research asked me to monitor that program was that I had run their physical oceanography program for 2 years earlier. Peter called these servers Distributed Ocean Data System servers, DODS. For my time and expense watching them, which was kind of fun because I don't know anything about what I was watching, I received a small grant, and I entitled that grant to Installation and Use of DODS Servers in the Gulf of Mexico region. And that became our initial concept for the system to become the Gulf of Mexico Coastal Ocean Observing System. Then 2 years later, in 2001, some friends at Mississippi State University received a plus-up from their senator. But the senator wanted some of the money to go to Florida, and some of the money to go to Alabama, and some of the money to come to Texas and Louisiana and so on. Not large amounts. So somebody over there called me, and I turned in a 2-paragraph proposal, and they sent me some money. I entitled that proposal TAMU contribution to a distributed marine environmental forecasting system. Now, Matt Howard, who you know of, a very talented data manager who was working at Texas A&M at the time, but also was an unpaid consultant to both NOAA and the National Science Foundation for working with them. He took these funds and he enabled Dodge servers at 5 research institutions along the Gulf Coast. So once that happened, I considered that the beginning of data sharing for the future GCOOS. Then in 2003, the next year, I was working part-time as a consultant for the Admiral and Navy at Stennis and also for IOS and NOAA. And with some assistance from those agencies, Matt Howard and I arranged a meeting at Stennis of the various managers of federal and state coastal observing systems all along the Gulf Coast. And they came to the meeting and we went through the usual thing of what is the global ocean observing system and what are we trying to do here and so on. The turnout was very good. I will say the response was very lukewarm. People were not really prepared to share their data, even though they were funded by state or federal funds. Nevertheless, I prepared with Matthew a very positive meeting report and we moved on. And I consider this the first organizational meeting for GCOOS. Now at that time, efforts were underway to organize about 12 regional observing systems along the Gulf Coast and along the Great Lakes. And that was to be called a U.S. Integrated Ocean Observing System. These are terrible acronyms, IOOS. And it was part of the U.S. contribution to the Global Ocean Observing System that I had worked on for almost 20 years through UN agencies. I have to digress a little bit and say something about Margaret Davidson. You may or may not have known her. She was a very intelligent, forceful leader with a background as an attorney and the director of the South Carolina Sea Grant. And among her other awards was a 2007 Nobel Peace Prize. And in 2003, she was director of NOAA's Coastal Services Center and was a strong supporter of IOOS. And she began funding the regional associations, including ours. And she gave us money for the period 2003 through September 2006. And then we moved to the major year for development of GCOOS, and that's 2004. Something that's happening almost every month. Using support from the Coastal Services Center, an industry IOOS workshop was held in March at Marathon Oil in Houston. And we engaged reps from all the major petroleum companies, service companies, related companies, the Boeing company, and observers from government, service, and some individuals, but not many. It was a very thorough discussion of GCOOS, of IOOS, and GCOOS concept. And there was general acceptance of the concept there, unlike the previous one. And I will say now that Ralph Rayner was at that meeting, and he was the managing director for the development of the Fugro Group internationally at that time. He openly defended this concept of GCOOS and data sharing against the concerns of a number of service companies that were selling data and products and didn't want this to happen at all. But he did a very good job. Then later in March 2004, Ann Jockins and I had attended the first meeting of the representatives of the U.S. Regional Observing Systems held in D.C. and called by Margaret Davidson. And it was at that time that some structure was introduced at Margaret's insistence, to all the observing systems around this country, namely to have a regional association which governs the system itself. Two separate entities, really. So we, yes. Yeah, and another little aside, I should say, I mentioned Ann Jockins and I attended that first meeting. You may or may not remember Ann Jockins, some of you would not. She was an environmental attorney licensed in Colorado and in Alaska and worked for Gulf Oil. When Gulf Oil closed or was sold, she and her husband moved to Texas A&M. He became a distinguished professor in petroleum. And she earned her master's and PhD in oceanography and went on to have a great impact on the formation of GCOOS. So in April 2004, so you got January, March, April, we had a meeting at St. Petersburg between U.S. reps and various monitoring groups that were reporting on HABs along the Gulf. And that's probably the most enthusiastic group of people that I met with in all of the organizational meetings that we had. They were really gung-ho about sharing data and being completely open. Then in September 2004, Buzz Martin, Robert Martin actually, a key environmental director of the Texas General Land Office, Landry Bernard, who was the former long-term director of the Naval Oceanographic Office and was then the associate director of the National Data Buoy Center, and I met at Chevron in Houston. The meeting was organized by Court Cooper, who was a mid-ocean specialist for Chevron. The outcome was what we've heard today. That was when the oil companies agreed actually to share these data, have them quality control through the Data Buoy Center, and then have them distributed by GCOOS. So, and to me, that was a remarkable thing because in 10 years of work in the Gulf of Mexico doing applied research, mostly related to the oil industry, I worked with many of the mid-ocean people, and they had tried to do this, but their attorneys would never allow these data out of there. We did manage, when we were doing those 10 years of work, to receive a lot of their data with the express guarantee that we would not publish it per se, and we would return it to them. And that was fine. We used it as statistically. But this is a completely different thing, and I was happy to see how far that's advanced nowadays. And then I would just say in September that year, we received another grant extending the development for GCOOS through August of 2006. Then about November of 2004, Mike Sprenger arranged an organizational meeting of the GCOOS Education and Outreach Committee. I don't think we called it that at the time, but that's what it has become. And that was a very enthusiastic group meeting in which Christina Simonillo has played a key role. Say a word about Mike Sprenger. He was a professor of extension and outreach at the University of Florida, and he was the associate director of Florida Sea Grant. And he was very keen on getting our extension and outreach program going. Okay, I guess I should say that by that time, having had some success with 5 different programs or meetings that year with different groups, most of the key players that were around said we should try to formalize GCOOS. So Ann Jockins and I and a few other people holed up in New Orleans for a while and wrote an MOA and a business plan and a few other documents that we thought might be necessary. And invited 89 stakeholders from a whole range of groups to attend a meeting and discuss whether or not they would be willing to sign an MOA to form a corporation. Well, after a long discussion of several days, 88 of those 89 signed. The first one to sign was the Texas General Land Office, interestingly enough. I believe this achievement was possible for a number of reasons. A key one is that Matt Howard had assisted numerous Gulf Coast institutions at this point with data sharing. Another key point was that all of the people that were involved were really enthusiastic about selling this. They tried to sell it to everyone that we met with, just the concept. And that makes a big difference. If you've got a large team out selling things. So it's not me, it's them. I should mention a few other helpers here, particularly Robert Stickney and Ralph Rayburn. They opened doors for me with the Gulf Council and the Gulf States Marine Fisheries Commission. Stickney was Texas Sea Grant Director and a very respected, published shrimp mariculture person. Rayburn was his associate director and leader of the Texas Marine Extension Service. And Ralph knew just about everyone worth knowing in the Texas government. You could walk in and talk to the then head of Texas General Land Office, and that's a powerful post in this state, as most of you know, or anyone else. So having had an MOA signed, Ann Jockins and I organized a meeting of the observing system reps and announced that the RA had been approved at least by MOA. In response to that, we were awarded another grant that carried us through May 2009. And at that point, the one stakeholder who wouldn't sign initially came around and signed. Interesting. So we arranged the meeting for the initial board of directors based on, and the initial board was based on a vote of 80 of the stakeholders, including 16 universities, 3 Sea Grant programs, 3 petroleum companies, 5 government agencies, and a slew of other things, foundations, environmental groups, consortia, and so on. And the initial meeting of the GCOOS RA board was held in August 2005 in Houston. The officers and directors were elected, the MOA was affirmed, and from 2005 to 2012, both GCOOS, that's the observing system, and the RA grew and strengthened, and I would say in large measure due to the leadership of Ann Jockins at that time, because she took very active role in making this thing work. Also, at that time, I would say 2 other people played a really key role, and that is Chris as the leader of education and outreach, and Matt Howard as the data manager. I played almost no role. I just remained on the board until 2012. And then at that time, I did hire an attorney and get together certificate of formation of the corporation, incorporated it, and prepared an application to the IRS. Took the IRS only 15 months to look at this and come back and say we think you fulfill all the requirements for a charity, and that's what we are. Basically, we're a charity. Then through I think that's 2013. So I think that's where the real formation story ends. I'll just say that I stayed on for a few more years to prepare corporate reports, the tax statements to the state, the excise tax, the IRS tax, etc. And then in 2016, I became free after a 16-year effort on this. And I happy to be free. That's it. But I am impressed with how far things are coming, and I'm sure they will continue to grow. Anyone have any questions? Good. Thank you very much. I do have one other job here, and that is to award thanks and an emblem of those thanks to a friend of mine and long-term acquaintance who's been on the board for a very long time and who became the treasurer of the board. So I have a plaque here for you, Jan van Smeren. Do you want to come up? And this plaque says, "In grateful recognition of Jan van Smeren for 2 decades of unwavering dedication and visionary support to the mission of GCOOS." And I'll just say that, I know we've been on the board together for a long time, but you've stuck with it longer than I have. Yeah. And I'll also say to everyone that Jan helped try to develop a number of different projects. So one that I do remember is we tried to get data sharing agreements with Pemex, the Mexican National Income. We went to Mexico City where they have the headquarters. We went to a town down in Yucatan. No. Yeah, Villahermosa, where the engineering headquarters for Pemex is. We put on a show at a university down there. We visited UNAM, Mexico City. Didn't work. Please. Thank you.
Can I get a quick picture before you move on?
What?
Thank you.
I've got a lot of stories that I could tell you about GCOOS, and I'm not going to bore you with them today. But it's funny you should bring up that time we were in Villahermosa, because if my memory serves me correctly, we were there the day of the Mexican elections.
Yes.
And one of the rules that they had in Mexico on election day is that they don't serve alcohol. And Worth and I were sitting in the hotel wondering how we could stockpile enough booze to get us through that last 24 hours.
We got something.
We did, yeah. Oh, yeah. We solved that problem. But I just say, obviously Ralph Rayner, who I will be hiking with in a couple of weeks'
Oh,
time.
good. Tell him hello.
Set me up and he kind of forewarned me about Worth. And I mean, I was pretty new to the States, and he said, you've got to go and see this guy in Texas A&M, and and so I met Worth, and the reason for my tenure on the board actually, Worth, is not any skill or anything like that. It's the absence of anyone else who wanted to become the treasurer.
Thanks, I can understand that.
But thank you to Rafael for doing that. But no, I mean, I think for me it was, I came from industry. It was kind of hard-nosed, brutal commercial world, and then I joined with people that shared a common interest with me outside of just that commercial world. And through the last 20 years, I've met lots of people from industry, from the academic world, and from state and federal government, and I've worked closely with them. And it's been one of the most enjoyable experiences of my career in oceanography. So thank you to all you guys who have made that possible. And
thank you for being there.
One more round of applause. I will really want to thank Worth and Jan for making GCOOS what it is today, for all of us to be successful in it. And before we get to closing, what did I do?
You're blocking the signal.
Thank you. We do have one more award to give out. And was Antonio able to join us? Okay, Chris, I would like to have you come up and we'll at least walk through this award. So going from the past to ensuring GCOOS's future, we give out a Matt Howard Fellowship Award every year. And Chris leads the team who pulls that fellowship process together and helps select our awardee. And so, Chris, I'd like for you to come up and talk about that just for a few minutes. I do have a slide if you want to put the slide up that talks about Antonio. And I'll turn it over to you. And
I'm standing between you and cocktails, so this will be really fast. Matt Howard, as you know, was beloved. He was a founding member of GCOOS. In his untimely death, we just started the Matt Howard Scholarship, and the requirements are basically something in science, something in the Gulf, something that is going to make the world better, and do it with humor, do it with grace, and do it with passion. And this year we were thrilled to honor Antonio Palacios, and he's a student of a TAMU faculty member, Dr. Henry Potter. And he was here earlier. I'm not sure where he went, but I'm going to leave with Sherry. We have a certificate and a little gift basket for him, and we'll leave it with that. Thank you.
And before we close our meeting, I just want to thank everyone again for being here today to help us celebrate all the successful years of GCOOS. Special thanks to all of our presenters, to our special guests, and to all of you who have made this happen for us. And I am standing between us and celebrating with adult beverages. And so if we have a poster session beginning at 5 o'clock, goes to 6, and then we will go from there back to the hotel where we will be having our formal celebration. And so we will herd everyone that way once we get done with the poster session. So please look at the posters downstairs. Does anyone have any final comments, questions, thoughts they would like to share before we close today's meeting? Marcus.
I'll say something. So when Sherry approached Jorge and I about 6 months ago about hosting this meeting here, we were like, okay, well, let's see. And the biggest concern we had was, I hope people come. And I would say people came. We had 80 people here today over lunch, and that is awesome. We know last year was a wrench. We tried to do in person last year, and with government funding and shutdowns and travel bans, we were like, this is not smart. Let's do it this year. Let's make it big. Let's go. Let's go hard. And we are. And we are excited, and we're so happy that everybody made the effort to come to College Station. I know some people are like, College Station? But I promise you, as someone who's spent way too much time here, it's actually a lot of fun. And there's a lot of nice things here. It's a great town. It's a great atmosphere. The hotel venue is beautiful. I hope you have a really good time. I hope the food has been excellent here. I rather enjoyed it. So I hope you did too. So thank you all for coming, and let's keep it going.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcus, and thank you to the rest of the GCOOS staff who's made this happen. Any other last comments? No comments, then I would like a motion to adjourn. And a second? And all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you guys again very much, and let's go ahead downstairs and we'll have the poster session.
Thank you.